This conference will now be recorded.
God can't bury me. You gotta get on the other side of me. Okay, on the other side. You're gonna go on that side of Marie in case she wants to run. Well, okay, well then, I won't. I'll just say move. She said, then you gotta get on the other side of Marie because she has to run. She said she can't run. I said, I'll just say move. I don't want you to have a heart attack. You know. She's like that. I have to watch her all the time. Did you take the money out of it first? Yeah. She remembers that. I'm sitting there. I found these notes that I had made from that meeting that you asked me if I had notes from them. What is it? 2 hour meeting. Okay, the rest was what anybody can. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome back to those of you who just got back. I see some familiar faces that are back for the season, hopefully. Hopefully everybody had a great summer and is doing well. I'm going to let the board take over the town meeting today. They want to talk about the chuck wagon and some rentals and stuff. So I would like to welcome Barbara Fugelberg, the board president, Marie Basham, and Marilyn Sorensen, the board secretary.
Thank you and welcome back. I got back here myself just a couple of days ago and it is amazing. how many miles my fabric has on it as I move it back and forth between here and the state of Washington. But I always complain as to how much stuff my husband brings, but I have to admit, I was probably bringing more back this time than him. Louder, sorry. So I want to just talk about two things. I know that there's been a fair amount of next door chatter and some chatter on the Facebook page about an open meeting laws, violation of the open meeting laws. So I just want to clarify for you, for the residents who haven't been on boards, there are open meeting laws that says whenever there is a quorum of the board, which means the majority of the board, in our case, that would be 4 people of the board, who meet without calling a meeting that's open to the public, it is a violation of the open meeting law. Now, you will notice that the board does go into executive session, and that is a closed meeting to the residents, but we do have to give you 48 hours notice, and there are only 4 reasons that we can go into an executive session, and we have to state what that is. In our case, typically it is a legal issue, or it is a personnel issue that we need to talk. The board has been probably having more executive sessions in this past year, and the main purpose of that has to do with 2 things, in that we have an awful lot of legal issues when it comes to trying to collect the assessments. We currently have, the board is being very aggressive in collecting the assessments for those that are delinquent, and we need to do those in executive session. And also we had some questions for our legal counsel regarding foreclosures. If you can imagine, foreclosing on a piece of property is very difficult to do, time consuming and spending to do. And as a board, we need to determine whether that's something we want to do because it might not be financially feasible. So the board has been meeting regarding those cases. And then we've also had some meetings regarding personnel. And most recently, one of the meetings had to do with, occurred a week ago, Tuesday or Monday. And that was where we interviewed a new candidate for the operations manager position. And more will come on that. And yesterday, we met in executive session, again listed as personnel, for the specific reason of doing the annual performance reviews that we do on all of the HomeCo employees. And the purpose of that is so that we can determine what potential pay increases there might be so we can get that into the budget process. So when we do meet an executive session, which is a closed session, it has to be for 4 specific reasons, and we have to identify for that, and we can only talk about that topic that's on the agenda. And we work very hard at not doing that. Now, as far as the open meeting law and the instance that occurred a few weeks ago, we'd had a complaint and a concern that sometimes residents who happen to be employees might have access to too much information. And so I asked 3 members of the board to look at our policies regarding having residents who are also employees, to assure that any individual resident who's also employee doesn't get any information about any one of our financial information, because they'll have access to a computer system. If you recall, a few years back when we made the change in DRC, we had 2 residents who were employees there, and they actually had the ability in their job description to find other residents. And that puts all of us at some legal, potential legal issues. And so we wanted to review the HR policies specifically for residents who aren't employees, and then take a general look at all of our policies for employees to make sure that they are consistent with wage and hourly laws, and also that our benefit package is something that is going to be attractive to current employees and to future employees. So 3 members were charged with looking at that. That would not violate the open meeting law. 3 members met. They're not allowed to meet. 4 members are not allowed to meet without telling you. 3 members can meet without telling you. What happened was that the 3 members were in the meeting. A 4th member came into the meeting for the last 20 minutes of the meeting. And at that point in time, every board member should say, oh, we're a quorum. This is the violation of the open meeting law. One of us needs to leave. That didn't happen at that time. I've been on the board 6 years. I'm well aware of those open meeting laws. The rest of the board members have not been on that long. And when I chatted with them, no motion was made to send a motion that would change any of those things. They looked at the wording of the HR manual and made some minor changes to that, and they'll be coming forward to the board. So no actions were taken, no votes were taken. So technically, whereas a quorum did meet, they didn't make any decisions. Many of you know that I was a nurse in my former career, over 40 years in the healthcare field. You probably don't want to know this, but when there is something that happens negative to a patient, sometimes we might make a thing like, oh my God. Someone falls off an operating table, that's an oh my God. If someone dies of a medication error, that's an oh my God. But if something just was that maybe you started to go into the wrong room with the bedpan, that's a whoopsie. And I look at this as a whoops and an opportunity to remind all of the board members of what the rules are, and that anytime any one of us, the four of us get together outside the mail center and we're chatting like nice weather, Jesus, how come it's so hot here? One of us might then say, hey, what's the status of the pool heater? So that technically, if we were going to take an action, would be a violation of the open meeting law, and one of us needs to step away and do that. So it can happen innocently. I look at this event as an innocent thing, and the board members who were in that meeting all understand. So I hope that you view it as that. If you have any other concerns, please let me know. Board members know that there are consequences for violating that law. And one of the consequences can be significantly detrimental to any one of them or any one of us. So we take that seriously. Do I have any questions on that? Okay. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to spend just a few minutes on is the chuck wagon. And I think that's probably why many of you are here. You also might be here because of the trick or treat regarding the rentals. Regarding the chuck wagon, recall that last November 4th, we had a meeting here, and there was probably about as many people, if not maybe 1.5 times people here. And we told you that we had an opportunity presented to us from Chef Peter, who was interested in managing the chuck wagon. And so I talked about sort of the history of the financials of the chuck wagon, showing that we've gone from a point in time where we had well over $150,000 in that bank account, and we're now down to $15,000 in that bank account. And it, part of the last few years is COVID related. We understand that. We also know that there have been changes in management, and we also know there's been a decrease in the volunteers there. So when I asked you what was the chuck wagon mean to you, there were a number of things that came out. And one of the things that came out loud and clear was that it is the heart of the community where friendships are made. And we heard that loud and clear. And the thought being that if we do entertain a letter of intent with someone else leasing that property, that is the one common thing that cannot change. That we want it to remain the heart of the community where friendships are made. You also talked about the camaraderie of the volunteers and the concerns about labor costs going up with outside management, and that they were looking for good management. Some of you also said that prices are bound to go up. We know they are elsewhere. Some of your areas of concern were pricing. They wanted a menu and pricing before you could agree. There's a concern about liquor. Many say that they would not want the group to have a liquor license, and some were open to allowing alcohol. They felt that the dining room needed to be updated, and particularly how we can attract younger residents to that. So one of the couple of the things that were the biggest fears, we went at the outside vendor. As some residents said, they wouldn't support it if the prices increased, and they're not willing to volunteer if it's run by an outside person. And they were concerned, particularly of Chef Peter, of expanding his catering services. So some of the deal breakers were pricing and security. So after that meeting, which we really appreciated all of your input, we engaged Coldwell Banker Real Estate to look at having some outside vendors who might be interested in leasing the facility with those core concepts in mind. It has to maintain the heart of the community where friendships are made. Pricing has to be decent. Food's got to be good, and the ability to volunteer. Coldwell Banker received over 1,400 inquiries. 1,400 people were interested in leasing this space here. We've had, I remember there was a man by the name of Steve Brown, was it? Who's the resident? Is he here today? Who's had restaurant background in leasing spots. Steve Deal, who's a member of the board, his son is in the restaurant business, and others, and Leo. And what they said is that that chuck wagon was intended to run 1,000 meals per day, 3 times a day. It is that big. It is a kitchen on steroids. So of those 1,400 people, there were some that only wanted to be a Mexican restaurant, some wanted to be a sushi bar, one wanted to be an Italian place, lots of different things. And just recently, and so we hadn't heard much from many of these people. We still were getting Chef Peters being interested, but just recently 2 young men came up they'd been apparently inundating Leo, who is the Coldwell Banker representative, about leasing the place. They currently have a restaurant in a park. It's called the Sanctuary Cafe. I don't recall the name of the park, but it's over in Peoria near 101. And apparently they've been doing very well. They're a couple of young men in their 40s of interest. Their father was one of the gentlemen who installed most of the phone systems in Happy Trails. And as young boys, they probably worked under many of the park models in Section 1. And Dad had them underneath the park model as Dad was screwing holes in it, and they had a flashlight up so he could drill the holes. So they know Happy Trails. They like Happy Trails. They like the Happy Trails, the Roy Rogers, Dale Evans theme, all of that. They have a really good business sense. They have a really good energy, and they really engaged in the thought of us being able to maintain it at the heart of the community where friendships are made. And they're also very concerned about pricing. They are not looking for a liquor license, so that would still be able to have BYOB, which people would enjoy. They're very interested in catering to the clubs and state dinners, but they're not at all interested in having that as a catering kitchen. They want it to be a successful place where the residents can come and enjoy, and they're very interested in theme nights. We really think that this might be the right group for us, so we are the board will be entertaining a motion at the board meeting next Thursday, whether we should move forward with going with a letter of intent with these young men. My concern about them was that they haven't been in the restaurant business that long, but they have done a lot of very successful entrepreneurial activities. You know, I don't have children, so I think of anyone, you know, younger than 50 as being a kid, and so maybe they are a kid. You know, so they are in their 40s. They do have a military background. They have a lot of energy. If you look at Sanctuary Cafe, they have a Facebook page. All of their reviews are 5-star, and they are very interested in customer service. They're very interested in residents continuing to volunteer. They know that they're going to need all of our help to make it successful. So with that, what stands out to you as a red flag? Yes, go ahead. It would be open to the public, certainly would not have any major advertising. We have to look at whether there could be a sign out on the easement. That may or may not be legal based on, you know, there's rules about what you can post on stuff. They think that there would be some of their customers that would currently come over. You know, we do get a fair amount, even pre-COVID, we got a fair amount of outside people, particularly Arizona Traditions folks coming over. So there's not going to be major advertising though, which I think is a concern of people. Think that when we have Vendors Day, we have 1,000 outsiders coming in here. So. Okay.
I was just wondering, Marilyn Klein, Lot 392, have you looked at the problem that we were going to have with separating the utilities?
Jill, can you speak to that? Because she has the most intimate knowledge on it.
That will come to the board on Thursday at the board meeting. We did find one company that will break out the electric, so we will know exactly how much to charge them for electric.
Hi. I was wondering, is it breakfast, lunch, and dinner? What
What
are they
they're-
looking at?
Their initial conversation was that when they are full speed, they'd like to be 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week. I think that's a little gutsy, but that's okay. Yeah, but they're talking about a slow open. And so that's the one thing that we'd have to nail down of when that slow open would be. In any lease, I'm sorry, I'm running into these ladies' time here. In any restaurant lease, I've learned, never was in that business before, but I've learned that typically, and it would be a 5-year lease, and they would pay us $5,000 a month. They'd be responsible for repairing all of the equipment and keeping it in good working order. So in case they left, we'd still have that equipment in good working order. But typically in a restaurant lease, you typically give 1 month free rent for every year of it is. And so typically we would give them 5 months free rent. They're only asking for 2. So we're not going to say, hey, but we'd give you 3 or 5. And so that slow open would be that they would start up, not in big fanfare, but start out with breakfast and get feedback from the residents about what food you like. They like biscuits and gravy. Okay, all right. So, and they like pancakes. There's some things they can't do where they're currently at because they're in a little ballpark area and there's some city stuff. I'll get right with you then.
I'm wondering, would they still want volunteers or is it, oh, okay. No, I guess I misunderstood. I don't hear it so well.
I don't know if you misunderstood. Maybe I didn't say. They are very willing to entertain the use of volunteers. Oh, yes, she wants me to be legal here. Yes, names and lot numbers. If a resident, they will have employees, yes. And if one of you want to become an employee and you meet their standards, that they'd be willing to entertain that too. They plan on being here year round. Some of you are, I hear that rumor. You guys like having wet underwear? I don't know.
You're going to have this open to the public. How are you going to keep the other facilities so the public can't go in and like the swim?
Right. So his question is, if we have it open to the public, how are we going to get it so that those people don't have access to the other facilities? Like the gyms and that. Right. So we understand that that is an issue that we need to deal with. So one of the areas that we are going down, regardless of whether we had some outside management in there, is that we know at some point in time, we really need for the health department is going to require that our pools be locked, in that only people with access to it, so that we are looking to have a key card system so that only people who have legitimate reason to be there in the key card. That's not going to be an immediate thing. We need to get bids on that. I understand that people are concerned about them coming out at Sun Village, where Chef Peter is right now. If you go to his restaurant, when you go to their guard gate, they give you a pass that you have to put on your dash that says you can only go to the restaurant there. And you have to put it on your dashboard and then you have to give it back when you leave. We'd be implementing a similar system. We know that when we have Vendors Day, we have over 1,000 people here and we don't have any issues with them coming in and using our things and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to try to stop that, yes. And I understand some of us go over there and use their bar too, I think.
Which is a revenue source,
Which is,
which is a revenue source for them.
Yeah.
So 2 quick questions. Would we still have food trucks? 1. And the second is the type of lease that would be incorporated would be a gross or a net. And the difference being, would the entrepreneur be responsible for paying their portion of real property taxes and water? I know you mentioned electricity, but what about the other expenses that are currently on our shoulders?
they would, part of the $5,000 a month would cover those things that we don't have the ability to break out. Then we don't have the ability to break out water. and that stuff. So that's why, and then at the end, every year we'd be able to renegotiate that based on what the actual expenses have been. So we've got history of knowing how much water is actually being used sort of in the town center. We've got history of electrical stuff. So as we can break out those things, we can, but we believe that the contract would cover that type of stuff. So the other thing, and I'll get to a bit, I promise I will, is that the things that it benefits us is that, as our budget committee has said, being in the restaurant business is not our core business here. We really don't know much about running restaurants. There's some of you who know a lot about running restaurants. One thing it'll do is because they'll be doing all their monitoring of their cash coming in and sending it to the bank, our accountant will have less time that she'll need to spend doing that stuff. And it'll also decrease our liability insurance because we won't be responsible for covering the slips and falls that occur back in the kitchen like we currently are. So there's some savings to us in that respect and some decreases. So now
But if we're open 7 days a week, I would think that the liability insurance would increase because there's going to be more activity in there on our liability. Because there'll be outsiders as well as locals utilizing the property at a much more heavily
we'll have
used-
to,
There's a lot
that's
of things.
good
think-
point, but our every December we do renegotiate our liability insurance coverage, and our broker is well aware of the restaurant stuff, and she's the one that actually brought to our attention that it would be decreasing our liability and our decreasing costs. So I'm Bill, and I'm not Bill.
Hi, Bill Tries, lot 2350. I'm still concerned about security coming in and out of here. And also, are they going to do catering?
So yes, security is a concern. And one of the things, and so if we can try to learn from other communities like Sun Village and the others who have restaurants like ours and are gated and how they access to that, I think we can implement some decent systems for that. Because we'll be getting revenue for it, and if we need to increase our security, we'll have some dollars to pay for that without it going back to us and saying, we need to increase security, so we need to increase your dues. So there'll be dollars available for that. Second question?
Catering.
Catering, no, they do not plan to cater. They were definite on that, except catering, the club dinners, the state dinners, those types of things. So, or a private party. Okay, 2 more questions.
Hi, Marla Festinese, 2323.
Just close to your mouth.
Marla Festinese, 2323. I was just curious, I'm trying to look it up, if this is just going to be pizzas and.
No, they're
Sounds-
planning a full menu in their current space. Because of city codes and that kind of stuff, they aren't even allowed to have a deep fat fryer to make French fries.
And will there be any gluten-free? Because I know
Yes.
a few, okay.
Yes. And yes, there will be. They also, they believe in fresh ingredients and quality ingredients, and apparently they don't use a heck of a lot of salt. They're more into herbs. So, Jack.
I say, let's go for it. We need something here now.
That is a ring of endorsement, Jack.
You just wanted me to run over. One question. When will this decision be made? And do you know if it'll be made before the end of the month, before our runners do it now, the volunteers?
Right. The TBD, the board is going to be at next Thursday's board meeting, looking at a motion to actually move forward with the letter of intent. We can't do anything contractually other than the board meeting. Okay, it'd be an open meeting. So, and that's what we plan. As far as the start date, they kind of gave us the impression that they'd be ready to go just immediately, like there and here on Saturday. Can they? Realistically, no. They probably have about $10,000 of stuff that they need to get the business and running. We are planning, I haven't told Jill this, but we talked to both Becky and Cindy, who did a phenomenal job last year of maintaining the status of that chuck wagon. Everybody agree? They did a phenomenal job. Right in the back. And so I know this would be a difficult transition for them. We've talked about having them meeting with these two young men, Matt and Steve Bison, to talk to what the transition might look like. All of us who met with these young men feel very strongly that they would very much like and would relish that opportunity to have people who know the chuck wagon, know the people, to make it be a successful venture.
Significant, but I'm concerned about cleaning, especially of the restrooms, because when there's a lot of activity here and the cleaning crew leaves at 2, those restrooms are sometimes really overwhelming looking.
And so that would be a concern regardless of whether someone else was leasing the restaurant, right? Just even if we expanded hours. Yeah, I hear you. That's a good point.
Well, for cleaning the chuck wagon as well?
Well, no, they were responsible for keeping that area clean. Now, the concern would be if, some of you have card games in there in the evening, you'd be responsible for making sure you leave it tidy yourselves too. But they would be running, once they're up and running, they would be under their own health department license. And so privy to their inspections. And so it behooves them to keep everything clean. Otherwise, they'll get closed down.
We still need to have a food handler's
I
license.
I don't see any reason why that would
Yes.
change. You're still under the same laws. Okay. All right.
Barb,
Yes.
this is Sharon O'Leary,
Yes.
602.
Yes.
Are they going to take the chuck bucks?
Thank you for bringing that up. They currently have a loyalty program where, and I don't know the details of it, but kind of like you spend X number of dollars, you get whatever. They currently have that. That's embedded in their TOAST system, which is the computer system that they use. So they're going to be having that. Steve Deal's big issue in this, again, was pricing, as is a concern of the residents. And he was wondering whether there couldn't be a discount for residents. And so they talked about that. They said they'd already thought about it, and they were trying to be nice to us. They really were being nice. They said, we were thinking of it being a senior discount. He said, but you're all seniors. So they would challenge us with maybe a super senior, so then they said, well, maybe people in their 70s. And I said, excuse me. So that's something that I think we could come up with. At what point do we want to have, we do think it'd be nice to be able to offer the residents a discount. But what would that be? What it would look like? Who would get it? So one more. 2 more, and then we need to turn it off to these ladies.
Roger Wilson, 1266. There's a lot of social activity that's in there with the games and others. Social. Will that end up being closed and moved over to other?
They are willing to work with that, and just that if they're closed and the social stuff is still going on, they're expecting that club or that group to clean up after themselves. So it's not like they're going to own it. No one can use it. It's not like that at all. They, as I said, they were, they know Happy Trails. They saw the love of Happy Trails when they were here as young boys, and they really do want this to continue on as that venture so that it's a good community for you. Yes. Just bring it up, Chair Mel. Don't, hold it right about there. That's okay.
Okay, I'm Sharon from 1341, and I just wondered if they are accepting the chuck wagon exactly like it is, or are there any upgrades or changes that have to be made to accommodate?
I think that the only thing they talked about is maybe a little lighter paint. Some of the people that looked, only to brighten it up a bit, some of the people that, no major remodeling, some of the people that looked at it don't like those big round eight tables. They kind of like them, again, because it brings into the community, but maybe 6 people or more, maybe more tables for 4, that kind of stuff. So we'll have to talk about that. And we as a community would probably be responsible for at least sharing in those expenses. We currently are, we have a lot of that on as a reserve. So we know regardless that area needs to be refreshed, as one of my colleagues used to say here. So something needs to be done regardless of whether they're there or not, okay? All right, with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues, Marie and Marilyn. And if you have any more questions or concerns, HDU, you can find me on the website. Send me an email, nice or ugly, whatever. Skip, we want your opinions. Thank you.
Am I on? I am. Barbara said, do you want me to go first or last? I changed my mind. I wouldn't stand up. I'd prefer to sit down. But I noticed this summer when my son came to visit, or this fall, I guess, I said, you're growing. And he looked at me, he said, Mom, I'm 53. I don't think it's me. So I better stand up so all of you can see me. One of the things that happened about a year and a half ago, we've been here living 4 years, but I've had family in Happy Trail since the 90s. They lived over on Nellie Bell, and this was part of our year events. We would come down and visit family, and we would have a good time. Mom lived here and Dad, and they had brothers and sisters that lived here. And while they've all moved on, my sisters have moved down, and so we're all here, and we're enjoying Happy Trails very much. When before I came on the board, somehow I came up across the topic of rentals in Happy Trails. And I don't remember how it started exactly, but then I don't remember a lot of things anymore. So what I do remember is my husband came home from the golf course and he said, I talked to a gentleman today and he's trying very hard to buy 10 units in Happy Trails for rentals. And it's kind of like a competition. His friend was with him and he had bought 7. And I thought, well, that's going to change Happy Trails if people just start buying them up for rentals. And so I heard that, and then I heard about a discussion in the post office where someone was saying, well, I'm buying rentals in Happy Trails. Okay, that's twice. And then I heard a third one at the pool where someone was saying, you know, this is a good place to make investments and buy a property because they make good rentals. So after I got on the board, I began talking to Jill and some of the others, and we discovered that a lot of people see this type of community as a good investment for making money. But that's not what Happy Trails was designed for. Happy Trails was designed for community, and you get community by people knowing each other and spending time together and having an invested interest in that community. Generally, the people that are renting are still working, so they don't have the time to get to know you and to get involved in the community. They're busy people, and that's not a bad thing. It's just our community, and where do we want to see it go? Now, I brought a paper so I wouldn't get too far off field. What I wanted to do was to bring this discussion to the community and have input from you guys as to how you feel about this. Now, since that time, I've been to, I think it's East Valley, where they have a large group of HOAs, and they got together, and I heard and listened and asked questions about rentals, and most of them have changed their CC&Rs to adjust for rentals. My phone is ringing on my arm. My sister told me I needed that, so I did it. That's what a baby sister will do for you. Anyway, we want to make it a public discussion. We don't want it just at the pool, on the golf course. We want to hear from you. What are you looking at? What are you thinking? We do know that there's some negative sides to having too many rentals. We did find out that, for instance, if you're buying a house like one of our modular homes, and you're trying to get an FHA loan, if there's a certain percentage of rentals in your community, they won't give you a loan. They're concerned about that. We also know that you can buy rentals and put them under government contract where the government will pay you a certain guaranteed amount every month, but the resident only has to pay about 1/3 of that. And they call it Section 8 housing. But that's available in a situation like this. What we're dealing with now is more and more rentals that are owned by people that don't live here. We're finding more of our residents, some of them have had property and just moved on, and they just kept the property. And they probably have a little more interest than those who've never lived here. But if a house goes into foreclosure, we just had a gentleman who owns a construction company buy it for a rental. He's never been here, and as far as I know, he has no intentions of coming here. We have had banks buy them. You cannot even get them out of you can't even get an assessment out of those folks. So if the house doesn't maintain, too bad. But what we want to do is change the CC&Rs, not so that, because we do like our seasonal rentals. We really do. These folks come in, they're enthused about getting here. Somebody really wants to talk to me, but I'm not going to talk to them. We want to encourage people that are seasonal. We want them here. We really do. They bring fun, they bring a certain vitality to our community. Now this summer, I will tell you, we had almost 1,000 people stay all summer. We only have 2,001 doors. So that's a big percentage of people that are beginning to live here, which was not originally the case. Most people just came as a destination area for wintertime. It was warmer, it was pleasant, and then they traveled on. But we are beginning to see, so it is changing. Happy Trails is changing. And we want it to go into the future improved and better, not go downhill, and nothing just stays the same. It's either going to improve or it's going to deteriorate. Let me ask you a personal question. How many of you have ever gone back to a house that you lived in as a child and looked at it? How did it look? Yours look good? Oh, that's great. I was so sad. Mine they took away. They picked it up, put it on a truck, and took it away. My husband's was in Rochester, New York, and so it was a pretty old neighborhood now. It didn't look so good. It was kind of sad. But, you know, a lot of them probably look that way because those were older neighborhoods, and they do go downhill. And we don't want that to happen in Happy Trails. I'm afraid if it turns into mostly rental properties, it will. I'm afraid it will. Yes, Marilyn?
I have heard, and I've been wanting to ask the board I've never seen it about short-term rentals. And I'm not talking about 3 months where they come for the season, baseball season. I'm talking about Airbnbs or somebody that just comes for 2 weeks and parks their vehicle and goes somewhere else, which.
That's paragraph number 4. All right. We have an upsurge in properties being purchased for rentals. And I'll tell you another reason we have rental properties are getting so expensive. With inflation, it's just a 1-bedroom little apartment is running between $1,500 and $1,700 a month. And you can rent in here much less expensively. So we're becoming known as a less expensive place to rent, which may or may not be a good thing to know.
Howard Demond, lot 758. I see all these outside for sale agencies and they're selling to non-RVers. What's your process in their sale and transactions?
Some lots are designated for RVs, but most of them are not. And if you have an Arizona room, you really don't need to have an RV on it. That's just the way it is.
Marilyn,
Let Barbara answer this.
anybody over 18 can buy a house in here.
They can't live here, but
You
they
just can't live here
they can't
unless
live
you're
here,
over
but they-
55. And Bill Rhodes and my other colleagues, Marvin Parker, that have been on the board for a long time, Bill Rhodes particularly reminds me that this legally is not an RV resort. Am I correct, Bill? We're a resort. So we started out as through Thousand Trails, as you brought in with an RV. But when the very first park model came about, then that transition changed. There's nothing in our documents that says we must have X number of lots maintained as RVs.
So we're not
That-
an RV resort.
That horse is out of the barn, so to speak. So we would hope that this would remain, and that's one of the things with that long-range planning survey that we'll be getting the results in January, is we're hoping that the community will really define what we want to be in the future. And I think many people really see this as a community that is an active community for active adults, something like that. You'll come up with something fancy. But so yes, we are allowing people without RVs to come in. You know, part of that was because, well, to come in, but also to sell. So many people came here with their RV, and then the husband and wife were here, and then their children got a little concerned about daddy driving that RV. This was one of those children. So was my mother, concerned about daddy. So at some point in time, people needed to transition out of that, not having the RV any longer because it's just sitting there clogging up its oil. And we wanted to allow people to have that opportunity. Many of you who live in those beautiful Arizona rooms, that as you age and want to get rid of the RV, but that wife had that Arizona room built the way she wanted it built. Now, I know I'm being sexist here, but my husband makes no decisions about the house. So talking about myself here. So did we want to tell that person, yeah, you have to sell that RV, but now you also have to move out of that beautiful home or second home? So that's one of the reasons that rule got changed.
Barb's my expert go-to person. I wanted to tell you though that she made a comment I wanted to expand on a little bit. It is an active adult resort. And we had an interesting thing happen. One person came into the office area and they said, well, we've bought a place for our parents. It's cheaper than assisted living, and what we're looking for is maid service and a yard man. So we're cheaper than assisted living, and if you're incapacitated, bring your folks and put them in here, but we do not supply housekeepers and yardmen. So again, we want to remember, what is the purpose of Happy Trails? What do you want it to look like? It's not assisted living. It's not just low-income housing. It's none of those things. Can we have some exceptions? Can we have some situations where that might be a relevant issue? Yes, but we want to put the rules in such that it keeps it a community that we like. Now, I thought I'd give you a statistic. A year ago, I got some information from Jill and I ran it. And at that time, we had approximately 124 owners that owned 290 units. 290 units. So then we have people coming in now and they're Airbnbs and they're staying less than 30 days. That's a big turnover. And if I own a property and I own a small company and I want to give you a weekend off and let you go use that unit for a party or for a getaway, you have no invested interest in the community, nor will you necessarily take good care of that property. But a high turnover rate is going to take its wear and tear on your facilities and your amenities. So keep that in mind. So what we would like to do, oh, and wait, here's an interesting fact. We have had ads for places in Happy Trails that would sleep 4 to 6 people. The rule is that it's for 2 people only, 55 and older. Nobody's going to stand in there and ask people to see their IDs, so we don't know. We don't know. We do need to change the CC&R to say what we want. Now, here is a recommendation. This is not a rule. This is a recommendation. Please remember that. All right, first, that our long-term rentals would be limited to 270 days a year. That's 9 months. It could be any 9 months you want, but it's in a calendar year, 270 days within a calendar year. And secondly, we will not permit short-term rentals for less than 30-day period. All agreements would have to be made with the knowledge of the office. The office would have to have a copy of the lease. Now, what are we going to do about the folks that already have rentals? And what about the people that really are financially strapped? These are issues we have to deal with to make these changes. And I understand that. So what I'm asking of you, well, let me ask Marie. Marie, do you feel up to, Marie's not dealing with a headache this morning, so.
Excuse me. It's up for discussion. One of the things we want you to do is to think about this. We've got We're Listening programs coming on the schedule. So this is why we wanted to present this today, so that you have time to think about this. Bring your issues to the We're Listening, because that's what we want to do. We want to listen to you. We want your feedback. We want you to talk about this. There are a number of you that have neighbors that are rentals, that you have rentals, that you have people that you have been renting to for a long period of time, that you have concerns. We know that this affects you, whether it's you yourself or whether it's your neighbors. So this is why we brought this to your attention today, so that you've got time to think about this, to mull it over, and to bring your issues to us on the We're Listening, because that's what we want to do.
We also want to encourage you to write down your questions. You may email them to the board, and Marie and I'll take your questions, but the other board members I'm sure would also. We will sort through those concerns, and that way we can find the primary concerns. It'll help us keep time down. Did you have something, Jill? You're pointing to a question. All right. Vicki, we can't hear you.
Okay. As an owner, I'm concerned about the people, the investors who are buying up property just to rent out. Is there any way that we can limit the number of properties that these people buy?
There are HOAs who have done so. Now, just remember that any restrictions that we consider, we will have to run through legal. Arizona does have state laws concerning HOAs and condos and what we can do and can't, but we can certainly consider it, and we can certainly submit it to the legal people and see if that's a possibility. If that's what the community thinks we ought to do, we can do that.
I'm assuming these people don't live here at all. They're never here.
Most of them are not, no.
Bill Trice, lot 2350. I'm just concerned that maybe you should get some people who live in the area, you know, in Happy Trails that live here all the time, and then have them on like a committee. And then you guys, because these people have been here for years and years and years, and they have a lot of input.
I'd like to address that. We've got the long-range planning that's going to be happening in January, and I think that would be a great breakout session. And I think that's a great suggestion, and that's definitely on the long-range planning suggestion. I think that's a good idea.
That is a great idea.
I'll just remind people that the We're Listening sessions are scheduled October 20th at 9 a.m. in the Manzanita room, and again at 1 p.m. in NC2, and there'll be more in one in November, I believe, on the 17th.
Yes, we'd like to do that. Please tell your neighbors about the We're Listening sessions. Get those questions to us. Let's make this productive for the next few months so that we can move ahead and it doesn't get bogged down. I have a lady standing back here in red.
Yes, Vicki Griffiths, lot 1408. And what I'm concerned about with these short-term people coming in like this, we've already addressed the sex offender issue before. However, when they rent out to these people, do they do a background check on them?
We are not encouraged to get involved in the renting process. We do want to encourage owners of rental units to do this, but as far as making demands on them, we're not really able to do that.
One of the things that we will have to address is that if there is a violation, let's say you guys pass these rules, because there'll be a change to CC&Rs, we need 50% majority to get it approved. If there are violations of that, there'd be fines that we can define, and it could be significant. We could say it's $1,000 fine if you allow a renter in there who's a sex offender or something like that.
Yeah, we do have to work that process out to reinforce it. You're right. The good.
We would be fined if we enforced it?
No,
No,
if,
They break.
if I
They-
rented my property to a sex
Oh, I
offender,
see what you're saying.
I could be
Okay.
fined. But we
Yeah.
need that in our rules.
Because when we were doing water aerobics before you guys changed the CCNRs about the sex offenders, there was a sex offender that kept coming back and forth in front of us at the pool, right? Remember that? Okay.
Yeah.
So, but we got rid of him now.
It worked.
All right. First of all, let me reiterate. We want your questions, but we want you to go home and write them out. We want you to email them or bring them personally to the we're listening sessions. We will go through them. We want to hear what you have to say. We're about to run out of time.
There's a question in the chat that says, do we
Okay.
know what other resorts in the area have done or are doing about rentals? We know that there are at least 4 that have already done this, and we've been using some of their language on some proposed language that we might put forward. There are some concerns that would all have to be done legally. And so that's the big issue that we're trying to address.
Right. We've got, that's where we're coming with some of the proposed changes is we have looked at other HOAs that have done it. I am using Palm Valley as my kind of go-to,
Yeah.
looking at what they've done. They're over by Apache Junction, but they've been very successful with their changes. So we aren't trying to reinvent the wheel, guys.
Right.
We're trying to do what other HOAs are doing because we don't want to be the one group that didn't do it. And then we get have the consequences.
Regarding the short-term rentals, there's been every year probably 4 or 5 different things that the state legislature looks at in monitoring short-term rentals. And many of it relates to city ordinances, and that the cities are trying to put in some changes that the landlord has to be registered as a landlord and certain things that they need to do. The city of Surprise has not implemented any of that. The city of Scottsdale has, because that's more the party town, I guess, than they think we are. But we could prove them wrong. You know? So city of Surprise has some ordinances right now, but city of Scottsdale does, but city of Surprise does not.
Again, yes, Marilyn.
Marilyn Klein again. For a lot of people's information, when this first started, was with the auction, trying when Happy Trails went into bankruptcy, and they were auctioning off lots. That's when they were really cheap. They were bare lots, and sometimes didn't even have the facilities on them yet. That was to build us out and make us not so we went bankrupt, because it was the bank that went bankrupt. But that time is past. We've been built out, and those should be grandfathered even if they even exist anymore. But we're going to have to be careful, because sometimes people come and rent, and then maybe they rent for 5 years, but they eventually buy something. So we have to be careful and set a limit or something about how many lots that they can buy.
All right, that's a very valid point, Marilyn. Thank you. I'm going to turn the meeting back
Marilyn?
over to Jill if I can find her. Oh, all right, Jill. Okay, go ahead.
Lisa Day, 1317. Just one quick comment. The board, I think, is doing a great job, and you've got a full plate, as does the Long Range Planning Committee. I think the gentleman whose name I missed earlier, had a good point, and that's that we do need a committee to really sit down and listen to the owners, take suggestions, and bring it back as a committee. But let's put a committee together that can bring it back to the Long Range Planning Group and be the voice for the people within the resort. And if I can help with that, I'd be very happy to. I just retired from 40 years as a real estate broker owner. I've developed condominium projects. I've been president of many HOA boards, large profitable boards, and I'd be happy to share my expertise. But I do think, regardless of whether I'm involved or not, we need a committee of the people, not just the board, not just long range planning, but of the people, to sit down and listen to the voices of our residents.
Thank you. If you'll give your name to the president on your way out.
We're email pals. Now I see a face to the email. Are you done?
I'm all finished. Thank you.
So Jill,
Thank
I
you.
think the burning question is the pool heater.
What pool heater? We're looking at the last week of October for installation.
So, that was one of those supply chain issues that took a long time. But then what took even longer? Jill, how much did we pay for that pool heater? 60,000. Do you know it's costing us $22,000 to install it? I know, she's right. How much do we pay for pickleball? Well, we want to support all those amenities. A lot of pickleball people paid half, and pickleball people have put in over $200,000 into this community. So, but yeah, it has been difficult to find someone to install it. That has been the biggest issue, because we had a lower price, but they couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't violate the warranty in the process. Okay, all right. Cascades building, Jill, when's that going to be done?
Here's our supposed to be installed on the 20th, and then we'll have some touch-ups, and then it'll be open.
I saw a picture of the inside. Have you snuck in? It looks pretty good. Oh, it's locked, oh. All right. Well, thank you very much. Board meetings next week. See you there.